Hi class, welcome to this first attempt at switching from face-to-face to online learning. The rest of our course is going to be comprised of these short lecture bursts as well as your readings and responses to your readings, your RRs, plus exam number 3 and your vocation paper. If you have any questions about that, please text or email me. If there is anything I can be praying for you during this time, any ideas that you want to share, discussions you want to have about the readings or anything else, please let me know. I'd like to support you as best I can from being far away. All right, so our first lecture burst is on biblical idolatry. John Ortberg, in his book Soul Keeping, talks about how humans are limited when it comes to our intelligence, our strength, our boredom with listening to recorded lectures, our lifespan, all of these limits. The only way in which humans are not limited, he says, is when it comes to our desires. And so he wonders if the soul's infinite capacity to desire is a mirror image of God's infinite capacity to give. He asks, what if the real reason we feel like we never have enough is that God is not yet done giving? The unlimited neediness of the soul matches the grace of God. So this means our problem isn't our neediness. Our problem isn't that we desire. Our problem is our fallenness. Kind of sounds like Reeves, doesn't it? Ortberg says our need was meant to point us to God. Instead, we fasten our minds and bodies and wills on other sources of ultimate devotion, which the Bible calls idolatry. When the Bible speaks about idolatry, it's referring to the worship of images or foreign gods. And even though we can blow that stuff off as ancient foolishness, in the Bible it is treated with the utmost seriousness. Some of the strongest negative language in the entire Bible is reserved for the commission of idolatry. Words like abhor, detest, provoke, abomination. As well, some of the strictest punishments are reserved for when people commit idolatry. So we know that God is serious about his people disengaging from it, avoiding it at all costs. And yet, no matter how many times God warned his people against committing this sin, they just couldn't stay away from it. There's the image that Micah makes in Judges 17 and 18, Jeroboam's bulls in 1 Kings 12, and of course the infamous golden calf incident in Exodus 32:33. I don't know if you remember that one, but the Israelites get tired of waiting for Moses to come down from meeting with God on Mount Sinai, and so they melt down their gold jewelry and they make a golden cow out of it to worship. That is who they called Yahweh. Now, of course, we snicker, but think about it. How many times have you done stupid things because you were tired of waiting? So this fondness for creating statues to worship, even with little explanations like that, it still confuses modern people. I mean, how could anyone think that this carved or crafted image actually has any kind of power that's going to make a real lasting difference in someone's life? Now, the people who crafted and worshipped the idols, they understood humans had made them, but they also believed that by engaging in certain ceremonies, those crafted objects could become worthy to be vessels that a spirit would inhabit, that a foreign god would come in to. So the Dictionary of Biblical Imagery says it this way. We know from both Egyptian and Mesopotamian records that an idol's inauguration required an elaborate, magical, nocturnal ceremony that opened its eyes, washed its mouth, and endowed it with life. These rituals rendered the objects suitable for the presence of their god. Once it had become inspired, the idol was treated royally, dressed in kingly robes, carried in procession, offered the choicest foods, and the temple staff served as its courtiers in spiritual kingship. So they go through all of this effort to find ways to manipulate the universe to act in their favor, to give them the life they wanted, to give them children, to give them success, to give them health, to give them influence, as well as to get rid of their enemies, to get rid of any problems or obstacles that stood in their way. And this promise of control, of accessing the life that we've always dreamed of, man, that is like catnip to humans. Even if it makes it go crazy, we want it. But God knows it's actually kryptonite disguised as catnip. which is why it arouses God's jealousy. Now, God being jealous sounds strange, doesn't it? But it's there in multiple places throughout the Bible. Idolatry makes God jealous. Deuteronomy 5:8-10 is an example. It says, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God." So why does worshiping something that doesn't exist, nothing that can make an ultimate lasting difference in our lives, why would that arouse God's jealousy? Well, if you think about it, if it's God's triune nature to love, to always be moving towards outward expressions of goodness and life, if God is holy love, then his jealousy must come from that as well. So in that love, he knows if we center our lives in or around anything other than the triune, it will lead to our downfall. It will lead to violence. It will lead to destruction, to death of both individuals and societies. So unlike human jealousy that's selfish, that's a narcissistic need to get one's own needs met at the expense of other people, God's jealousy isn't like that. It's not about him, it's about us. God's jealousy isn't him on some ego-driven power trip. It is God on a love trip. His jealousy is an expression of his fierce desire to destroy that which is destroying his beloved. The only way for people to avoid that destruction is to be loyal to him. This is why the two main metaphors for idolatry in the biblical narrative are marriage and politics. Marriage, God is Israel's good husband, and he demands exclusive love and devotion from his wife because he knows this is the only thing that will meet the desires of her heart. But Israel keeps committing adultery. She's married to God, but she's unfaithful to her husband. And in politics, God is a good king who protects and provides for his subjects. In return, he's to receive their exclusive trust. But Israel keeps committing treason, building alliances with other kings. So in both metaphors, the notion of exclusivity is central. A husband is to have exclusive claims when it comes to his wife's love and affection. A king is to receive the exclusive trust and obedience of his subjects. So when God doesn't receive this affection, this love, this trust, this obedience, things ultimately, though not necessarily always immediately, but ultimately, things go very badly. In fact, when things go badly for Israel in its history, you can always trace it back to some sort of idolatry. That's why Tim Keller says, idolatry is the sin underneath the sin. And that's why the book of 1 John can end with the words, "Little children, keep yourself from idols," even though John hadn't mentioned an idol in the rest of the entire book. He could do that not because he was switching subjects, but because that's what he was talking about the whole time. What was underneath all the other sins were misplaced desires, turning to something other than God to make the real difference in their life, to give something else ultimate devotion. So passages like that lead the New Dictionary of Biblical Theology to say that the root problem with humans is not horizontal, it's not social, it's not things like sexual promiscuity or greed, but rebellion against and replacement of the true and living God with gods that fail. So if the story of the human race is a sorry tale of different forms of idolatry, the good news is that God reconciles his image bearers back to himself in Christ. It is no coincidence that the prophets envision a time when idols will finally be eradicated and replaced by true worship. So what does this have to do with our lives today? Well, the next couple of videos, the next several readings you're going to be doing, address those issues. We're going to be considering modern forms of idolatry, those we have as a society, those we have as individuals. But as you read and as you listen to the lectures, remember the problem isn't having desires. It's not wanting a wonderful life. The problem is where we turn with our desires, what we consider a wonderful life to be this side of the new heavens and earth. So we need to ask, are we bringing our desires to the ultimate true God or to counterfeit gods? And can we spot the difference between the two? It may be uncomfortable to talk about these things, but it's good to talk about them as well. And so as you read, as we converse, remember Jesus' words from John 14. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Let not your hearts be troubled, and let them not be afraid. See you next time.